Aujourd'hui, on a le plaisir de vous présenter sur notre plateforme une conférence sur une ville post-Covid. Et c'est en fait un architecte espagnol, Vicente Guallart, on a le plaisir de vous présenter aujourd'hui, qui va nous raconter en fait un projet qu'il a remis au gouvernement chinois Pékin ou à un concours. Il a même gagné le concours sur l'objectif d'imaginer un quartier autosuffisant d'une nouvelle ville post-Covid. Il a remporté ce concours avec bravoure et en fait, il s'agit d'un projet d'habitation qui vise la réindustrialisation des villes et qui est complètement adapté à la vie post-Covid, c'est-à-dire en intégrant le télétravail, la vie en communauté, l'autonomie alimentaire et énergétique. Donc, ce fameux monde d'après s'invente déjà dès aujourd'hui par des idées de Vincent Guallard, qui va maintenant vous présenter son projet en anglais. Je vous présente Monsieur Vincent Guallard, qui est connecté en direct par, je crois, de Barcelone, de sa maison, et il va nous faire un discours en anglais sur son concours avec des explications. Hello, Mr. Vincent Guallard. You hear us? Can you hear us?
Oui, je peux vous écouter. Je parle un peu français, mais il n'est pas très bon, alors je préfère parler anglais si c'est possible.
Parfait. Alors, je vous laisse la place et la parole pour nous expliquer et nous ramener dans vos concours d'architecture d'une ville autosuffisante. Merci.
Merci. Pardon, vous devez me permettre de partager mon écran. You should allow me to share my screen. The system doesn't allow me to share my screen.
On est en train de faire le partage d'écran.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
You can do now the sharing of the screen yourself.
No, for the moment it doesn't allow. It said I am not allowed to share the screen, sorry. Now, yes. Now it works. Okay, so I will start with my presentation. My name is Vicente Guallart. I am the founder of Guallart Architects, and recently we won a competition in China in order to develop self-sufficient housing. I have been working in China in the last year in several projects, and I would like to do a short introduction in order to explain how come this idea of this project, because this project is not something that just only appeared because of the pandemics and because of the different conditions, but we have been working for a long time developing these kind of ideas. The first thing I would like to share is I was chief architect of the city of Barcelona during 4 years. And during this period, we really were working doing an upgrade of the city and developing what we call the renaturalization. So, for example, we had still some infrastructures from the end of the 20th century with highway even in the city center, and that is displaced in the city. And then part of my work was to define a new ecological principles to it. But more than this, also, we were literally demolishing some of these infrastructures from the late 20th century. So that means that we know that we live in a world that need to finish the process of urbanization that we had during the modern times, with the idea of the city for the car and so on. And in places like in Barcelona and in my previous work, we invest a huge amount of effort in order to do real projects, to do some very specific and real projects like that one, no? Demolishing highway and then placing a park in the city center. Other projects we were doing were related with the new technological district called 22 Watt, and then creating some new campus where we could merge the technology of information and also the new ecological principles. As part of my work also, I was proposing this idea, like in fact 10 years ago, that today we live in a world that we receive products from outside the city and we consume in the city. So we still have this centralized production system of energy, but also food and so many things. And then the city of the future should be something like this. The city of the future should produce their own energy. And in fact, right now, with the new statement from the European Commission that by 2050, Europe should be a zero emissions continent, the first place where we should start this process are the cities themselves. So we need to transform our cities. This is the first drawing. Like 10 years ago, we were starting to plan to have greenhouses on top of existing buildings in the city, and also charging the electrical cars with the energy that we produce with the solar panels, and introducing this new layer of data and metabolic systems in parallel to the physical structure of our cities. So I would say that this thing we were working in the past, and obviously I have been also, after my work in the city council, I have been doing urban projects also. This one is in Russia, in Moscow. This one is a project for public space I did several years ago in Taiwan. Um, and also I have been developing urban projects in China. This one I won 2 years ago a competition in Shenzhen, trying to introduce new ecological principles, but in this case at the urban scale, with a much more bigger scale. And in this case in Shenzhen was more about a new CBD, a central business district. In China, they are still in a huge process of urbanization. This is another competition. We were second prize, creating a new district in Shenzhen for 1.5 million people. And we propose to have a very dense areas in the territory, and also having a lot of green areas and using the river as a kind of element that could structure the territory. So I would say that I already had some experience in China, but we knew in January that the Chinese government was launching a new competition because they are doing a new city here in Shuang. This is the south of Beijing, is 100 kilometers south, and they want to do a kind of economical triangle with Tianjin, that is the harbor of Beijing, that is the capital, and this new district that should allow to decentralize some services from the city. And this was the master plan that was somehow approved. They did an international competition, and as you see that in this case they were proposing to develop a city that is very different to today's Chinese cities. Today's Chinese cities, as you know, are more like that. So they are still following the principles of the modern urban planning, where we have residential neighborhoods and we have industrial areas and we have offices neighborhoods. So that means that the people are always moving from one side to the other of the city, because the principles of the modern planning was based in this idea of the specialization in the urban segregation. In this case, in Shuang, they were proposing to do an urbanism more like the European style, I would say, or the European systems, where they have a compact and dense grid with, in this case, with a lot of green, but also including mixed use principles in this development. In fact, uh, this idea of the modern city is well represented in this diagram. Today, we have still this industrial development model where the buildings, the cities are receiving products from outside, like food, energy, even material for the construction, and the cities are producing trash, or the cities are producing CO2 emissions. So I think that we are really at the very end, or we should be at the very end of this industrial city model. And the new ecological principles for the new cities should be related with the idea of the biocities, the cities that promote life, cities that are building continuity with nature, cities that produce food and produce in the city or around the city, cities that absorb CO2 instead of emit CO2, cities that use the wood as an important material for construction, because if you do forest management, you can use the wood as material for the construction. And these are some principles that we have been working in the recent years. Another important principle that we also use for our project is moving from this big scale centralized model to the distributed model. So the centralized model that is very represented in a city like Moscow, but also like Paris, where there is a very rich center, and I would say poor suburbia, la banlieue, no, where there is also some social segregation between the center and the periphery. And then the model that we have been working in Barcelona is this distributed model that, instead to think on the city as a big element that is growing, growing, and growing, the city is organized by a group of cells of 1 kilometer diameter, where you can find all the activities and all the functions inside the city itself. So this is the diagram with this 500 meters radius model, where people should find all the activities connected with public facilities like market, health, education, and so on. And this model, in fact, recently also the city of Paris launched a program called the City of 15 Minutes, where the idea was the same, is to have these neighborhoods where you can find all these activities inside of them. So about the mixed use in China, I would like also to explain that, they only make housing yellow. For the Chinese is housing, but they only make housing, family housing, looking south. So all housing in China is oriented north-south. And that's why for them, when they have a square or a rectangular block, means that in the east-west side, they can have some offices, they can have some, for example, hotels, or they can have also some student residence, but they will never do family housing looking east-west. So that means that the block, and this is different obviously than in Europe, but the block should be able to develop this mixed use by introducing, for example, also public facilities in the center of the block. And also they play with the idea of the scalability, the idea that if you have a block like this, you can develop a mixed-use neighborhood like this, and you can develop an urban district also like this. So if you are able to do one block that is mixed-use, you can do the whole district like mixed-use. So now I will go directly to the to the block, to the competition that we did, because what the government did was to launch 6 simultaneous competitions about different topics for this new city. One related for the office buildings, another related for the public facilities, and another was related with the housing. And that's why we choose to work with the housing, and they offer us 4 blocks that are these ones that have this orientation. This is north-south. So our first idea was to think on how the people live, but thinking not only that people live in their home, but there are at least 3 scales where we should think that is the home, the building, and the neighborhood. So that means that the citizens, we don't live only in our apartment, but we have also a relation with the building and with the neighborhood, and then thinking on these functions of the mixed use, and also thinking on the pandemic situation or the potential crisis in the future, we thought we should organize very clear these 3 scales. In fact, we were developing this competition when we were, in fact, in the lockdown. We were in February in China. They started the lockdown in middle February. And in Europe, we started lockdown in middle March. In Spain, we have a very strong lockdown during the 2 months from March to middle May. And so that means that we were experiencing ourselves this situation of living in the lockdown while we were thinking how the cities in the future should be. So our proposal was based in this principle that we should mix 3 different typologies of buildings. One that are the European, I would say, compact and square blocks. The other is this idea of the highest density with the towers that you can find in China. And the third thing is that we wanted, with the idea of producing things in the city itself, we were introducing also the greenhouses as part of the design. So the result was to have a city where you have a profile that is not like Paris or the center of Barcelona, where there is a control of the height of the buildings. So we wanted to have a broken high system, and at the same time, we wanted that all the roofs should be covered with solar panels, and almost all roofs should be covered with greenhouses. So this is the result of the 4 blocks where also there were some courtyards, you see, and the courtyards were full of, also where had some public facilities. They were asking for a kindergarten, also a fireman station, a government, a small center, and we include a swimming pool and other public services. And that's why we were defining this mixed use, where the mixed use was also happening in plan, but also was happening in section. So the first thing was related with the slow mobility, the idea that people should be able to walk. And in this model of the city of the 15 minutes, the idea is that we should walk to work. We should walk to go to buy food or to go to other places that we need to do in the daily basis. And that's why we were thinking how we could do this, having this passage. And if you see also what are the new mobility system that are arriving, this is the so-called last mile minibus, self-driving minibus that at some point will be happening very soon in our cities. In China, they are always talking about these systems. And also you can see also these electrical systems that are very useful in order to move in the city center. The interesting thing about the future is that when you think about the future, you need also to think about the past, because many things that we are thinking for the future already happened in the past. And this is a very clear sample. You know, that this technology seems to be very advanced, but 100 years ago, there were already people inventing new transportation systems. This is a picture of Barcelona where they were developing this electrical kind of skate system to move in the cities. Another important topic today, we have seen these streets that, in fact, the government, this is again Barcelona, where we are expanding the sidewalks and the people are able to walk and to bike with more in a more safety situation. In Paris, they have created a lot of bike lines and new spaces for the pedestrian people. But if we see in the past, this is exactly how they were the cities 100 years ago, because in 100 years ago, before the cars existed, the people were using trams and they were mostly walking. So that means that we imagine that the city of the future should learn also from some elements and some situation that they were already in the past. In our case, we developed this project with this big courtyard, but where the people were able to access to the school, to the market, to the swimming pool by walking, and this was an important topic in our project. Another important topic is the idea of the urban metabolics. So the idea that the buildings should be not only consuming resources, but should produce resources. The buildings should produce their own energy and should use the energy to make light, but also to charge their electrical car. And so the idea of adding a metabolic layer to the buildings and blocks is a fundamental topic for the city of today. This is one diagram that we explain what are all the layers that exist in the cities. And then we wanted to introduce all these new principles using telecommunication network, water recycling system, energy self-sufficiency, the production of food using slow mobility as part of the design of our city. So we propose also to create some applications in order not to connect to Facebook and to connect with other people around the world, but these applications to connect to your neighborhood and to create platforms for sharing products and sharing elements. We were also dealing with the zero waste, with the circular economy, proposing to reuse the waste. You will see now in different ways. And obviously we propose in these blocks to have like different public facilities. This was like 400 by 400, so this is not still one of these neighborhoods of 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer that could represent the city of 15 minutes. So here we could not have a school and maybe not a health center, but here we have some of the public facilities that are part of this city of the 15 minutes. Another important topic is we were working with timber in order to develop our buildings, because the timber is the material of the construction for the near future. Now in Europe, there is an explosion of projects develop use timber, basically because the timber has captured CO2 inside them. And then when you make a building of timber, you are creating a structure that more than producing CO2 has already absorbed this CO2. And then now using the cross-laminated timber, the so-called CLT, we can develop many new kind of constructions. Barcelona, we are developing many of them. And in China now, the question is, they are not still working with this technology, and we are discussing with the government how we could work with some companies that in fact from Austria, Germany and France that they are already working on that. And if China decides to start to work with timber, that they will do for sure. There will be some leaders, and obviously they need to take care about managing the forest around the world in a sustainable way. So these are the image of the four blocks, where at the same time we were discussing also about the idea of the mixed use, where having spaces to work. Obviously, we were thinking that people, you will see now, should be able to work at home, but we were creating, especially in these corners, buildings for co-working, for offices, and many different forms of working. So this is our proposal, the image from the corner. You see with the sharing bikes here in the corner, and this facade that is mostly with everything is done with wood, with the greenhouses on top, and also some office building here in the corner. Another important topic is about the mixed use, is that we propose that in the section of every block, we should have obviously the apartments in the middle. We should have a space for working and shopping in the ground floor. That this is not very usual in China, but we were also proposing to have spaces for the digital fabrication here in the ground floor. But also we propose that in the roof we could have greenhouses in order to be able to produce energy and to produce food on top of every building. Also, in this section, what we propose is that if we produce energy, we can use it, or we can store the energy in the cars of the buildings, or even in batteries. The water will be recycled with the using the gray water in order to irrigate the garden, or even to irrigate part of the agriculture that we have on top of it. And in order to manage all of these, obviously there will be some digital application that will allow some management of the building, but also to connect with other people living in the neighborhood. These are the plans of the blocks that, as you see, are very simple and very, very, I would say, very traditional and elemental plan, with the square and the big courtyard in the center. This is the swimming pool in the center, and the courtyard with, in the courtyard, there was also agriculture, and also a space for playground for kids. Sad. And then about the food production, so the person that introduced the speech explained very well that we propose that we should produce food, energy, and things in our neighborhood in order to move towards the self-sufficiency. And then there are several ways to produce food in buildings, and in the cities there are basically 6 ways to do that, with vertical farming, with greenhouse on the rooftop, street trees, LED farming, and and the trees in the street. So from that point of view, we were applying many different approach in a very integrated way in order to be able to produce 40% of the vegetable that the people need to live. Obviously, it's difficult to produce all the food inside the cities, and obviously we don't want to produce things related with animals inside the cities, but we can produce a lot of elements from ecological farming inside the cities, and this is what we propose here. Because also, to have the control of your food production is, it would be good also in case of other forms of crisis that may will have in the future. So we propose to, you see here, to have the greenhouses on top. This greenhouse should have, I would say, 70% of LED coverage looking to the south, but I would say the north and will be with not coverage. You see here, and that's why here you see with this structure, we were producing many different vegetables, and in principle we propose to have it using natural light, and also having some areas, in this case there was a mezzanine, having LED farming. You will see some images right now. And we were sure that this can happen because in one of our trips to Iceland, in the Mediterranean, you know, near Barcelona, we can produce a lot of food and we can produce food with just in the open air. But this is Iceland. And in Iceland, they produce in 1 hectare 30% of the tomatoes that they need for 300,000 people. So that means that they have created the knowledge of the technology of using greenhouses to produce food. The Netherlands is one of the countries that they export more food in the world. So this is the climate there, and this is what they are able to produce. So that means that almost any city in the world could be producing food if they really wanted to integrate as part of the buildings, both using greenhouses or using LAD farming. Another, yeah, this is the section of the upper part. And then if we produce food in the rooftop, we can also have a food market in the ground floor, and also to have some restaurant with ecological food, etc. Another topic is the energy, and again, in many cities in Europe, they are producing energy. This is a big solar structure we have in Barcelona, and we have also in the public space some pergolas using solar panels. But in Brooklyn, they have produced this very beautiful structure in the rooftop of one small building, and they say if we are able to do one, we can do many. And that's why we imagine that we could have a huge amount of production of uh, energy, but not only with a pergola, but with some systems that are integrated in the building themselves. Sometimes on top of greenhouses, sometimes on top of villas, and sometimes on top of office buildings that are here in the corner. And the third topic is to produce things. We are working more and more using digital fabrication. In this case, you see using small robots, 3D printer, laser cutters, and so on. And then our idea is that we should produce also some of these elements in the ground floor in the building. In Spain, I mean, while the government was trying to buy masks to China, makers were producing these masks covering the faces that during the first weeks of the pandemic was something fundamental to save lives. So we wanted to introduce some laboratory fabrication in the ground floor of our building as and a fundamental part of some economical local development in this neighborhood. The last thing is to talk about the apartments, because in the apartments, we thought we should develop this idea of the extended apartment where the people can live and work, but also we propose to have some big terraces where we could have sun, and also we could, in fact, we follow the principles of the passive house, because if you have these greenhouses looking to south, you can collect the heat during the winter, and this can save a lot of energy in the building. And then in summer, you can open and you can have these terraces where people can play, and also, yeah, kids can play, adults can work. And this is what I am doing right now, talking from somewhere, and this can be done also from the terraces. So in China, they have very few typologies, and then we propose some very Chinese typology where they have the kitchen, 2 rooms, and this apartment. But we included the idea of having spaces for working as a fundamental part of the I would say the apartment, but also the terraces, to have a big terrace like 2.5 or 3 meters, in this case by 8, will allow to have like an extension of the house that can be used in a many different ways when you live in a family. We also propose to have some single family villas in the rooftop. You see here oriented to in the east side of the building, we have some of these villas that will allow to have more private and different configurations of families, and relation to the community. And also we have these elderly and youth people apartment that are mostly looking, are in the linear blocks in the east-west situation. So then our idea was to redefine what means to make housing, which materials we have, which new function we should include. And also in this diagram, we see this relation between the budget, that is another important topic, between the traditional construction and the zero emissions building. Because in the traditional construction, the traditional developer, they try to build very cheap, try to sell as expensive as they can, and then they go to do another business. But the new developers, they want to stay. They want to stay to manage the building. They have clients for for 50 years, and then there are many services to provide. So the idea the housing as a service is a very new, interesting, and important topic for the near future. So I would like to finish my presentation showing one video of that you can see in an animated way these the images of the projects, where you see what we were mentioned about the typology, about the mixed use community, about the slow mobility in the blocks. Now we are looking to the scale of the blocks, the idea of promoting the biodiversity in the blocks themselves, wildlife, and so on. The social community, how we create places for the social interaction, and also how we use technologies, 5G and others, in order to promote also this interaction. And then the result is, in this case, we're 4 blocks, but these principles could be extended to the whole city, and in fact to almost any city in the world. You see that the courtyards is something in Europe we used to do very well with the courtyards with the green, and we are doing less and less courtyards. For me, one fundamental principle is this: if we don't start to make cities that are more productive, cities that are more dynamic, cities that are more beautiful, uh, people will be interested to leave the cities. The cities need to be the place for the innovation, need to be the place where the new ideas are happening. And these new ideas should happen developed by the community or developed at the urban scale. And that's why for us it's very important to work in this urban scale, because if we are not able to answer from the cities and from the community scale to these pandemic situations, then rich people will be interested to leave the cities, because they will find that the city is a place for the problems. The city is not a place for the problems, it's a place for the solutions, and it's a place where we could have a more efficient life and we can have a more social life. This is the ground floor with the digital fabrication facilities, the swimming pool. Yeah, and then the bioclimatic extended home with the cross ventilation, the light, the multi-purpose home. Also with these villas on top, with the facade, the terraces. Now we have been contacted from people from several parts of the world that they are interested to develop projects similar to this, and obviously we'll be more than happy to develop these ideas anywhere. I think Europe is a perfect place for these ideas to happen, and if anyone wants to contact us, they can find us here through the website and so on. So thank you very much. I don't know if there is any any question or any comment, I will be happy to answer or to comment. Thank you. Okay, so it seems there is no comments, questions, or anything. If this is the case, thank you very much. And again, it has been a pleasure to talk to someone there. I was in Luxembourg some years ago, also talking with different people, and I hope very big success with your event. Thank you and good morning.